All right, welcome in everybody. Today we're going to be tackling an FAA Knowledge Test question. And if you recognize this supplement here from the FAA, you know this is the question where the FAA wants you to figure out where you are relating to a VOR. So you got your CDI plugged into some radio on the OBS, you got the VOR tuned up to this guy right here, and you're trying to figure it out. Well, on the test, what you want to do is you want to create a small version of this. Like, it doesn't have to be like this, but just like take a piece of paper, draw a circle, and then put some lines across it like this. So that way you actually have kind of an idea of which direction you're trying to work with here. So then what you do is you take, okay, we'll go ahead and do an example one here. We'll go ahead and use the number 5 here. We'll go ahead and do number 5. So number 5 is set to 210. So the radial for 210, we're going to go ahead and draw that down. You want to draw that radial out on your piece of paper on the test. So 210, I'd say like 180, 90, 200, 210, I don't know, something like that, right? So just to help us find our position later, we're actually going to draw the opposite one there too as well. So this one long line, so you got that radial plugged in. And remember, where did we actually get that radial from? We got that from the OBS. So where is this thing pointed? Right there. I highlighted that red for you. So that's what you want to look at, okay? So the first thing you're going to look at in number 5 here is that you'll notice that we're actually just lined right up with this VOR, okay? So because we're lined up with it, that means we're on course. You see how our course here is actually just lined up with the bearing? Now, some of these other ones, it's deflected out to the left, or this one's deflected to the right. Now, this one, we're straight on here, so we're looking right down the pipe at this thing. So what that means is we know that we're somewhere along this green radial line. We just got to figure out which side we're on. We're either over here or we're over here, right? So because we're on the 210 radial and we're to the VOR, and you can see that I can figure out that we got a 2 flag is because of that, right? If it had a from, it would look like, this one down here, but we don't have that one. So we have a 2 on this one. So what does a 2 mean? That means you're heading to the VOR. That means if you were on a heading of 210 degrees and you're heading to the VOR, well, you would be on a heading of 210 degrees and you'd maybe be like right here flying along on this VOR. I don't know. Hopefully you're not flying this bad, but you're flying along on this VOR and you're kind of heading that way, right? So we can tell by this 2 flag and this 210 and this on course, those 3 pieces of information, that if you had to say on the test which quadrant you were in, you would say you're to the north and to the east. So you're somewhere up here to the northeast. Okay, that would be for number 5. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go back here and we're going to try another one of these. Okay, so let's try another one. Maybe that isn't quite so easy. Maybe one of these that's deflected. Like, let's try number 3. So number 3 here. Number 3, the bearing pointer is deflected out to the side, but we know one thing that's the same, and that is the same radial as it was before. So lucky for us, we can just go ahead and draw that radial. We'll go ahead and draw something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just got a kind of an idea of where that radial is. Now this time, this is where it gets a little tricky. So if you were an airplane, and let's say you were like right here, and this was your airplane, and you were flying along on a heading of 210. Now, remember, this isn't a heading indicator. This is just the OBS setting of your CDI, right? So that doesn't mean that you're heading 210, but in order to figure out where you are, you can pretend that you are heading 210. So if our airplane was here and we're flying 210 degrees and we took a right-hand turn and we went to the right and we flew, we would run into the course, because you see the course here. We would run into it, right? So because of that, we know that if we were flying along somewhere over here, like let's say our airplane was right here. If we were right here and we took a left-hand turn, we would run into the course. But if we took a right, we would never run into the course. See that? Now, if you actually instead put yourself on this side, maybe right here, or maybe over here, who knows where you're at. But if you take a right, you're eventually going to run into that course. And that's what your CDI is telling you here with the needle deflected to the right. That if you take a right, you're going to run into the course. So now we don't know which of those 2 airplanes, we could be an infinite number of airplanes over here on this side, but we know one thing for certain, right? What do we know now for certain? We can go ahead and take this other side over here and we can say we're not on this side, okay? Anywhere on this side of this green line, none of this. We're not anywhere over here, okay? So now we're over here. So the next step is to look at the to from indicator, okay? So this one doesn't have a to from on the question here. So we'll just give ourselves one to kind of, let's just say we're heading to it, okay? So we're heading to this. So we're heading to this. If we're heading to this VOR, right, we know that we're heading to it. That means we're heading toward that radial, okay? So we're heading to the radial coming to the VOR. So if our airplane is situated like maybe like right here, let's say we're, let's be an orange airplane. Let's say we're flying like right here, and we can be flying any direction, doesn't matter, but if we're getting that 2 flag, that means we're on the side that's, you know, to the radial. So the radial's there. So we're kind of going that way. If you took a right and we're heading to it, right? You would intercept the 210 radial to the VOR, right? But if we were over here, let's say we were on this quadrant down here. Let's say that's actually a bad example. Let's go like maybe right here. If you're right here, right? And you turn left and you headed to the VOR, and then you were heading 210, you would be on the 210 radial, not to the VOR. You would be on the 210 radial from the VOR, coming out of the VOR from it, right? Not heading to it. So that can help you determine which one you are. So in this case, obviously, since we have a 2 here, we know we're heading to the VOR, or we're heading to the radial. That means which of these boxes do we belong in? Well, if the FAA test question says you're maybe to the northeast, then that's where this airplane would be in this case. Okay? So that's 2 examples. Let's go ahead and get rid of this stuff, and let's try another example here, okay? Let's try another one. Maybe we'll try one where we're not heading, you know, 210 this time. Let's try a different one of these out. Let's try a 0301, okay? So this number 9 here, he's 030, right? 030. And how do I know 030? Well, that's what we got tuned in there, okay? The other point of information we know is the from. So the last piece here is we have this course is lined straight up. So those are your 3 pieces of information. So with those 3 pieces of information, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out where in the heck we are on this course, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is, as we always do, well, we draw our radial. So in this case, it's a 030. And look at this, it kind of looks the same as that one, right? 030 radial, which is this radial coming out here. So 360, 10, 20, 30 degrees to the right? So that's 030. So we got that piece of information checked off. Good. Now, what is it saying? Well, this one's saying we're on the course. So we're somewhere on the course on the 030 radial. And the 030 radial is coming out. Is it going into the VOR here? No, the radial is coming, the 030 is coming out of the VOR this way, right? It's coming out of the VOR. It's coming, what we say, from the VOR, right? If we were on the 030 radial 2, you know, hey, we'd be right here. If that had a 2 flag, we'd be 030 to the VOR. But we're not down here because we have from, which means our airplane's right here. And again, you know which one we're in because this time we're going to be up here to the northeast. Now, you're not always going to be the northeast. That's just happened to be where these all shook out on this one. But all right, so now you're to the northeast on that one, and there you go. All right, so let's do another one. This time we'll try, hopefully we're starting to get the idea here. You got to grab your 3 pieces of basic information from this thing, right? So in this case, we'll grab number 7. Okay, number 7 is right here. So the 3 key pieces of information are the bearing, the to from, which we'll kind of decide because it doesn't have one there, and the course. So this course is deflected to the left, and, you know, feeling good about this. We'll leave the to from for a little bit later. That way I make sure we don't show up in the northeast. So on this one, we start with drawing our radial. So we draw our radial, and again, we start with the 030, so 10, 20, 30 degrees, and we're going to come down here. That's not very good. That's a 20-degree radial. We'll try that one. There we go. Wow, what a good 30-degree radial there. All right, so the 030 radial coming off this VOR. And if you were to fly along here and then you took a left, you'd run into the course, right? Let's say I'm heading along. I'm on this airplane, right? This guy's flying on 030, right? This guy, he's been told, oh, hey, you got to fly 030. So here he is flying 030. Now look at those. Those are 2 different airplanes. They're both flying 030, right? But this guy can take a left. Doesn't matter how sharp of a left. He can run into that course, right? This guy can take a left, and he's not going to run into that course for a very, very, very long time, right? So we know already one thing for sure, and that's we're not over on the left side of this. In this case, we're actually going to be somewhere over here. So we know we can take this, and we can say, hey, we're not over here, and we're not over here, right? We know we're somewhere on this side because we got to take a left and get on that course as depicted by our CDI. So now this last one, so we're going to be on this indicator here somewhere. And we want to decide to or from. So to or from, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to decide, hey, am I going towards where that 03 radial is coming out of, or is it behind me, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 2 needle on this. I'm going to put a 2 flag. Okay, we're going to draw a nice 2 here. Wow, look at that 2. Wow, we're heading to the VOR, right? So we're heading to it. And if we take a left at 030, we'll be on course. So you guys think, okay, well, if I was flying right here, let's be a pink airplane this time. If my pink airplane here, I was flying along, and I took a left and got on course, and then I headed in toward the course on 030, right? Just like that. I would be on the 030 radial to the VOR. Now you might be thinking, well, this guy, I don't know. It's because if you were this guy out here in his pink airplane, he's good at navigation, right? He knows that if he picks this 030 radial up and he flies that 030 radial, well, he's heading from the VOR, right? He's not heading towards it. So we know of these two guys, which guy are we going to be? Which guy are we in this case? We're somewhere in a box defined by this, we're somewhere in this area. So you might get a question that says you're to the southeast. It might say southeast because it covers like maybe being like right here. So the question might say something like that. But be on the lookout for like southeast or southeast on that one for number 7 if you get something like that. So, all right. So the last thing I wanted to cover here was just kind of a reiteration of the fact that when we look at these OBS readings of 210, it might be 030. It doesn't matter which one it is, right? Any of these. Like the airplane isn't necessarily heading that way, okay? It's just something we can visualize to figure it out, figure the answer out. Sorry. So what I'm saying here is like on number 4 here, right? Let's do number 4. Number 4 here, we're going to start by drawing the 210 radial. We're going to be looking at our 2 flag, and then our last critical bit of information is that the needle's deflected out to the left. So those are our 3 pieces of information. And we'll go ahead and start by doing the radial. So that's the 210 radial again. So that 210 sits right here. Pretty nice radial. Now, in order to figure out where we are, where we could, make, remember how I said, you're flying along here and you make that left-hand turn and you hit the course, right? Well, that would apply to people heading on 210 degrees. So airplanes, what color airplane do we want to be? Maybe like, what is this, like fuchsia? I don't know. So this fuchsia guy, he's flying along and he takes a left and he can be on the radial. This guy, he can take a left if he was on the 210 degree heading, right? So that's how we figure it out. But at no point does that actually mean that your airplane is that way. Like this guy could be heading 210 with that reading, and he could also be heading on, I don't know, what is it, like 250? And he'd still get the deflected reading, right? It would still be a left-hand turn. So it doesn't, the heading, these guys are on different headings, right? Like this guy's heading is like, I don't know, this guy's on 210 degrees, but this guy's heading like 250. So their reading would be the same, left turn, and, in this case, they wouldn't be getting a 2 flag, right? They would be getting a. These guys will both be getting a from flag because this radio is coming out from the VOR, right? So just remember the last bit of information here. Really, you want to remember on this is don't take this to be a heading because this is not a heading. That is just how you figure out where your airplane is. An airplane that is, this direction versus an airplane that's just, like, it doesn't make a difference which direction these guys are facing. What will happen here is that the radio would be deflected the other way for these two guys. So like this guy looks like this. He's got a 2 flag, so that's not the right guy. This guy over here would be, maybe this airplane exists right here, and he's on a heading. He might be on this heading over here, heading out 250, and this guy might be heading directly south. Okay, but the way that this works is this guy's would say 210, he would take a left turn and get on course. So that checks out with him. 210, left turn, get on course, head down, and then he'd be from the VOR, right? So if he's on this side, but since he's over here, he would get on course and he'd be heading, to the VOR. So he'd be a 2 guy, but it doesn't mean he's on heading 210. He's still on heading 250. It doesn't change the fact that his heading isn't on that. So that's just something to keep in mind here on these. The other thing I really want you to keep in mind is something we mentioned at the beginning of the video, which was you use this method to figure this out, to figure these test questions out. But, obviously it's not like where you're heading, but just remember to do less work if you can on that test. Okay. So if the answers are, maybe it's either going to be north, northwest, south, southeast, or south, southwest. And if you've already, blocked off this side, you can just already check the box that is the, this guy over here. You can already say, you know what, if A was north, northwest, because northwest is somewhere in this like shape. It's not a perfect box, but somewhere in this shape. That's where they get the north part from, because like northwest over here. He's not down here, right? Well, you don't know that, but you know it because it's not one of the answers, right? So you're either over here, and the other 2 answers are like, maybe the other answers were, maybe B was your northeast of the VOR. Just says northeast, not northeast. Just says like northeast of the VOR. So like, okay, that's northeast of the VOR, and then maybe maybe was your south of the VOR or southeast of it or something like that. Then you can just X these two guys out right away, and hey, this is answer A, and I'm moving on in the test, and I'm on my way to get my license. So, all right, that was it for that. I just wanted to make sure you guys had a good understanding of that. And I wish you guys all good luck on your test.